Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As usual, this meeting is being broadcast live to the public. For those not able to watch live, excuse me, the webcast will be recorded and made available for viewing on the County Council's website after the meeting. Before we can begin, can I please remind everybody to only turn their microphones and cameras, only turn microphones when you are invited to speak or you wish to speak. I have received apologies today from Mr. Frisbee, and acting as a substitute is Mr. Allen. And I have received apologies from Carolyn Lewis and Neil Lockyer. Item 1. The first item on today's agenda is the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of September. I move that these are taken as read and signed. Is everyone in agreement? Thank you. Agenda item 2 is question time. I have received 2 questions today. The first is from Mrs. Sue Whiting, who is present at the meeting, and the question and its response have been circulated to me. Sorry about that. Suddenly had green and red lights flashing. Taken as read. I would like to remind members that no discussion is to be held on these. Mrs. Whiting, would you like to come to the table? Yeah. I think you have a supplementary question, and I would remind you that your supplementary question should be to clarify the reply that you have been given and should not raise any new issues. So, okay?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for this comprehensive list of training. I am very familiar with most of the training listed, but would value an explanation of the components of Thrive training and which particular role the licensed Thrive practitioner plays.
Yeah, thank you. So the Thrive practitioner is an education officer for the children with medical needs, and the role of that officer is to work with children, parents and schools and any other involved agencies to plan a child or young person's education, whether that be things like requesting tuition and deciding whether face-to-face or online is most suitable, or planning for a return to school or engaging some other support around that child. The Thrive training is an approach used by a number of county schools, and it supports the mental health of children and young people through training and support for staff in settings. So that can be in early years settings through to school settings as well. And the overall aim is to boost the resilience of children and young people by fostering an inclusive culture that shows that all who are within it are able to thrive. And there's a website as well that we can give you to provide more information.
Thank you, Mrs. Whiting. The next question is from Ms. Jane Williams, who is present in the meeting. Again, the question and its response have been circulated to members of the committee prior to the start of the meeting and will be taken as read. I would like to remind members that no discussion is to be held on these. Miss Williams? I understand you have a supplementary question.
Thank you, Chair. I know you said that you document decisions, but do you take minutes of how you come to that decision and how that decision complied in full with the Children and Families Act and the SEND Code of Practice?
Yes. So records are kept of all of the decision making that takes place at panels, and these are logged on the child's file, but they're also retained centrally as minutes so that we're able to identify what decisions were taken on any particular date and also who the panel members were that were present. With regards to decision to assess and decisions whether to issue a plan, the rationale is recorded within the with reference to the relevant legislative test, and decisions regarding whether or not to consult with the specialist placement are made in line with the requirement to consult with the school of parental preference, but also the duty to ensure that the placement can meet the child's needs, is an efficient use of local authority resources, and is not incompatible with the efficient education of others.
Thank you. You are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you like, or otherwise you can leave. Right, item 3 is questions asked by members understanding orders 7(3) and 7(5). I have received one question from Mr. Max Hunt, who is present here, and the question and its response have been circulated to members of the committee prior to the start and will be taken as read. I would like to remind members that no discussion will be taken on these. Mr. Hunt, do you have a supplementary you would like to ask? Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Thank you very much. Item 4, urgent items. I have no urgent items. Item 5 is declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest that they wish to declare? Thank you. Item 6 is declaration of the party whip. Do members wish to declare the party whip? No. Item 7, I have not received any petitions. So moving on to the first substantive item, which commences on page 13 of the agenda, and that is Leicestershire Schools admissions. And Alison Bradley, the Interim Assistant Director for Education SEND, and Ted Walker, Head of Strategy, will present this report. So if you'd both like to start. Alison?
Thank you. Yes, so the report is on, the purpose of the report is on the position of Leicestershire school admissions and the responsibilities of how the Children and Family Services deliver these responsibilities. The background information is detailed in points 1 through to 5. I'll move through the document and pick out key points for reference in here. So on paragraph 6, it is the statutory duty placed on the County Council that sufficient school places are available within the area for every child who is school age whose parents wish them to have one. And this ensures that the County Council are able to fulfil all their statutory functions. On paragraph 7, all the county councils, including those admitting authorities, must determine the admissions arrangements annually. If there are any changes to the admissions arrangements, the admission authority must first publicly consult with the arrangements. If there are no changes to the admissions arrangements, then they consult every 7 years. On paragraph 8, the School Admissions Code has the mandatory obligations for the County Council in terms of compliance with the national closing dates and offer dates and how appeals must be conducted. In paragraph 9, the School Admissions Code determines that academies and studio schools are defined as their own admissions authorities as detailed in the paragraph 7. And therefore have direct responsibility for applications on fair access and appeals. And the table in there determines the information around different types of schools and whether they have their own admissions arrangements. In paragraph 10, the admissions policy sets out for schools under the control of the local authority school catchment arrangements within the purpose for ensuring that every child has a designated school. And there's an agreed set of priorities criteria that are used to rank applications when offering the places in schools and is detailed in this report. Paragraph 11, the majority of Leicestershire schools are academies, as you will know, and they have their own criteria and policies ratified following a formal consultation process. Most have retained the same oversubscription criteria as the local authority, and some have completely moved away from this. In paragraph 12, the changes in the academy policy has now appear to have confounded any parents, particularly where they are unable to secure a place for the child, even if it is in their own catchment place. The changes have made some academies made by some academies to their admissions code include capping the admissions numbers, giving siblings a higher ranking, and introducing new criteria on the children of the staff, and making changes to the catchment areas, some of which have now extended outside the Leicestershire county borders. In paragraph 13, the local authority process for schools applications is now sort of in the range of around 200 different academy admissions policies and criteria arrangements to determine how policies and placements are made, which has made it slightly more complicated than it would have been previously. In terms of appeals, in paragraph 14, there is no statutory duty placed on the county council to lead on providing an appeal service. Schools are free to engage with any private organisation or provider to run their appeals as they wish. In paragraph 18, all transfer and first-time admissions appeals must be heard within the 40 school days from the deadline being lodged. The admissions service has a detailed statement on behalf of the schools, has to prepare a detailed statement on behalf of the schools detailing the reason for refusal, as well as why the school are not able to take any further children. Managing the admissions in Leicestershire, the details of that are captured in paragraphs 22 onwards. There is a well-established practices within Leicestershire County Council for the management of the school admissions processes, which are detailed in paragraph 22. Parents, when they apply, are encouraged to apply online, as this provides them with an immediate acknowledgement on submission of their application form. It allows parents to change their mind and to be informed of an offer when it comes to National Offer Day. And in terms of fair access protocol, all Leicestershire schools have signed up to fair access protocol in order to make sure that their most vulnerable children are offered a place at a suitable school as quickly as possible. This includes admitting children under the published admissions number on the roll of the school, even if they're already full. First-time admissions and secondary transfer, as detailed in paragraph 25, the County Council has a statutory duty to process first-time admissions and secondary transfers for all Leicestershire schools, academies and maintained. Everyone must apply for a school place. It's not an automatic entry for a school. Parents and carers are encouraged to apply for 3 schools in order of preference, including the school which is in their catchment area. First-time admissions and infant transfer, for the application, the window closes on the 15th of January. And the window closes for applications processed in accordance with the school's admission criteria, and schools places are offered on the National Offer Day, which is the 16th of April or the next working day. For secondary transfer, in paragraph 27, the secondary transfer date is the 31st of October or the 1st of March, and the National Offer Day for the 1st of March or the next working day. Paragraph 28, the first-time admissions to infant and primary school, September 22 for Leicestershire County Council received 7,410 on first-time applications, which was 92% secured their first-time choice and 97.9% secured their top 3 choices. For Year 7 secondary school entry into September 22, there were 7,918 on-time applications, which is important to consider. 84.7 secured their first choice and 92.8 secured one of their top 3 choices. In paragraph 29, it's highlighting that in September 22, we saw the highest ever cohort of children transferring into secondary, and the details are noted in the table underneath that. In paragraph 30, it's highlighting that there are enough school places within Leicestershire to meet demand. However, across the individual county, individual schools and some groups of schools in geographical areas are more popular, leading to some applications for these schools that more than there are places. This means that in these areas or these individual schools, many pupils do not get the place and are offered a place of their next preference school. Midterm transfers. The admissions service manages midterm applications for maintained schools and for academies on a traded basis. Midterm applications include children that move into the area, and that can be for a multitude of reasons, including moving into new housing developments or are asylum seekers. Children that have not received an offer of the preferred school post-statutory school transfer rounds and wishing to are wishing to move for other reasons, which can be many and varied. That's the full detail of the report I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Mrs. Taylor, did you want to add anything to it at this stage?
Not at the moment, Chair. I'll see if there's any questions.
Not at the moment, Mr. Walker, so you'll pick it up as we go through.
Hey, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alison, for the report. Just one thing, speaking with colleagues and officers as well about the situation about the enrolment process. One of the big challenges you face is that a parent will only fill in one application rather than the three. Now, I'm led to believe it's an online process anyway. Is there any way of making it mandatory that they have to fill in three? And in addition, one of those has to be within the catchment as well? Thank you. Okay. So we cannot. Thank you. Under the admissions code, we can't make it mandatory that they have to fill in more than one option. Although what we've done is we've increasingly gone back to make the message very clear that we would recommend and encourage that they should, and to make them aware, as strongly worded as we can, the consequences of them not filling in more than one, which will mean they may get no place at all, because I think parents are mistaken sometimes in thinking they only put in one application, that means they're going to get that school. Well, it doesn't. And I think we do have some more work to do to work on the communications to strengthen that message and to keep reinforcing that. But we cannot physically make it mandatory. We're not allowed to.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's a really important question, because I think one of the challenges we've had, and as Alison set out in the report, is that where parents do only apply for one school, it significantly limits their choice, essentially. The challenge is twofold. One is that parents can apply for whatever school they want. It's absolutely up to them. The schools have a set of admissions criteria that every application is judged against. So as Ted said, we can't mandate them to, but we have been especially this year, really trying to be clear. It's absolutely most beneficial for parents to apply for up to 3 places. And we have changed the form so that if you don't apply for 3 places, it gives you a really strong warning about the implications of that. And we've also pointed a bit more towards catchment schools as well. For this next round of applications, we'll be even more explicit about the consequences of not applying for 3. And I think, you know, just to reinforce what Ted said, I think many parents will apply for one school because they think they'll then get into that one school. Absolutely isn't the case. It really does depend on the school's admission criteria and how they manage over subscription. And obviously we can only place children according to the admissions criteria of schools. So it's a kind of almost a message or a campaign around it really is beneficial to apply for more schools.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. Just 3 quick points. First one is that, you know, behind this whole report, there's the consequences of competition between schools, which is more aggressive now than probably it has been in the future. But in that respect, I'd just like to put on record the work done at Charnwood College, which has recently received a fantastic Ofsted of perfect goodness, like our town. So I don't know how the authority can celebrate these things, but I'm sure it will be well known to parents by now. The other 2 points I wanted to make was on paragraph 25, where we say everyone must apply for a school place, there is no automatic entry for school. That kind of rung a small alarm bell that do some parents not get their act together, and is that a significant part of the entry, and is that confined to certain areas or levels of deprivation? The other question, it's a simple one. I think I know the answer, but it really is important that the catchment areas are well known of all schools, really. And some of them put them on their websites, and some of them don't. And some of them actually quite hard to find out where their catchments are. And of course, they can change. So is there anything we can do about that? The other 2 questions.
Thank you, and I'll pick up a few of them, and Ted may want to comment on the number of applications we've received and those who don't apply. In relation to the competition between schools, you're absolutely right, and part of the not quite so new now, but drive was around parental choice and around parents being able to choose which school their child goes to, sorry, and obviously that does lead to significant competition, not just between schools, but actually about what's best for children and having the best schools for children. Where we've struggled in Leicestershire around school places, where schools aren't doing so well, particularly those that are judged not so well by Ofsted, and obviously that does have a significant impact then on parental choice and where parents would want their child to go. So you're absolutely right, recognising the improvements made in schools like Charnwood College have been hugely beneficial to the kind of whole admissions process in the Loughborough area, because there are now more schools that parents would want to choose for their children as well. In terms of recognising it, we do write to all schools, we write to all schools following their Ofsted inspection, and whilst we as a local authority are not responsible for those schools because many are academies, of course we'd want to celebrate their improvement because that's what's good for children. So we do write and we do recognise and we do celebrate where schools are doing well, or indeed where schools are striving hard to improve. In terms of the catchment area point, again, a really important point, it is absolutely the responsibility of a school to ensure that they've got their catchment areas on their website. So we've got nearly 300 schools in Leicestershire, and we will work with schools to make sure and encourage them that they've got that information really clear for parents. The other bit that we've done in terms of changing some of our communications is being much more explicit on the application forms around parents going and checking the catchment areas of schools on the school website. So schools should have, and many schools do have, their catchment area really clearly set out on their website so that parents can know which school they're in. In terms of the number of applications, I'll start off with that. I think Ted will be able to add a bit more context. Yeah, there is an automatic entitlement. Well, there's an entitlement to have a school place, but all parents or carers need to apply for a school place for their children. But inevitably every year there are a number of parents who, for whatever reason, they don't apply. We do some kind of reminder comms. Schools, so primary schools, will send messages out about reminding parents to apply for a secondary school, but inevitably there are some who don't apply. And I'll just hand over to Ted just to see if he's got any more context around those numbers.
Well, excuse me. So there were around 200 fewer applications than we were expecting of the 8,000 or so for the secondary places. So that's the size of it. Some of those may have come in at the last minute. So there'll be something of that kind of number of those that for one reason or another may not have applied, and as Jane's identified, there are a number of those. Some of those may be going to independent schools, some of those may be moving outside of county. They do get chased. There may be reasons under the admissions code why they can then have applications that are entered and then treated as if they were on time. Otherwise, it may just be a case that they'll have to do follow-up what mid-term transfer type applications, and they will be significantly disadvantaged in that. I don't have information on the demographics of those, and that may be something in the fullness of time we could have a look at. But that's an interesting question.
Thank you very much. Mr. Allen?
Thank you very much, Chair, and I welcome the report. My question is, I'm aware there are some families still in the county whose children haven't actually got school places yet, so they aren't actually in school. Could you help me understand if there are any particular reasons as to why that is, where they have actually applied, and have we got a timescale to actually address all of those so that every child is in school by a certain point? Thank you, Chair.
So I'll start, and then I think Ted and Alison might add some more. So every year, at any point in the year, we will always have a number of applications that come in for children who have, as you know, Ted said, either missed the deadline for applying for a school place to move into secondary or first time, but also those children who, for whatever reason, want to move schools or come into the county after the offer date. So any one time in the admissions service, we will have a number of people that are awaiting a school place, and we process those and we deal with those. And one of the challenges with those applications is that often they'll move into an area and they'll apply for their local school and then come to find that their local school is full because it's filled with those children who've applied earlier. So as a department, we regularly have a number of children awaiting. What we've seen this year, since particularly just before the summer, over the summer and into the autumn term, is a significant increase in the numbers of not just those children who've transferred from primary to secondary, but those who have requested what we call a mid-term transfer, and that's what we've outlined. And what that's meant is that there's been a delay in us being able to allocate places to those children, which then means that a number of those children are waiting longer than they should be doing for a school place. Now, most of those children do have a school place already allocated, so they're on the roll of a school in Leicestershire, and they could well be on a roll in a school in another county. But there are some children that we know about that don't have a school place allocated for whatever reason. Invariably, they are the children that have moved into the county, and those are the children that we're working through and making sure that they do have a school place. So in terms of kind of deadline for dealing with them, it's difficult to give because each one's been in the situation for a different length of time. But so the main message I can give is we are absolutely working through those, and we're working with the parents to help them understand which schools are available with school places. Some of that does lead to delay because sometimes it's not the school that the parent or carer wants for their child, and it can lead to appeals. So some of the delay is about us working with the parents and carers to help them understand which schools are available with school places, and some of it is about us processing. So we're working on every single one of those applications. We know about every single one of those children, and we're making sure that they do get a school place.
Mr. Whiting.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment on the 3 school places. As a never work these things out. As a governor of a special school, I understand there's a lot of anxiety for parents around siblings getting places at the correct school. I understand that 3 choices is best. I understand the narrative sometimes can be, you know, people pick one. And then you cannot literally get your child to school. So I understand that, you know, the desire for us to always have 3, but sometimes there are circumstances where if you put more than one, it's unrealistic your child will get to that school because you can only physically get them to one. And I hear this from parents a lot. So just to comment on it, that's all.
The microphone. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you know, one of the things we know is that we know why parents only put one choice, because often that feels like it is the only choice. So we absolutely understand the rationale from a parent's point of view of applying for the one school that you want your child to go to. The challenge we have is that we can't deal with the application on its own. We have to deal with it against the criteria of the school. And often in siblings is often one of the highest criteria, which means that those people who may live across the road from a school, for example, don't get a place at that school because there are other children who are much higher on the criteria of ranking. So we absolutely understand that parents apply for a single school because that's the school they want their child to go to. As a local authority, we have no ability to grant that wish, unfortunately, because we have to go and apply against the criteria of the schools, and we don't have the power to overfill those schools as well. So it's frustrating. It's part of the agenda around choice and making sure that parents are able to choose. So there was a move away from a focus on catchment schools and across, and all of the schools have quite different criteria as well for ranking. But we absolutely appreciate parents apply for a school because that's the only school they want to go to. But we don't have the ability to grant that for them.
Sorry.
Picking up on that point, Mr. Martin, as well, if parents don't put another school down and they don't get their place, they then have to pay for the transport to get that child to another school. If they put 3 choices down, we can't get them a school that they can get their child to, they're then entitled possibly to transport to help get their children to school. So they're just limiting their ability to A, get a place, and B, get help with transport to get to schools. So it is really important. I understand your point, but they need to put those 3 choices down. Otherwise, they're just limiting themselves even more.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Welsh.
Thank you, Chair. Appeals. What sort of success rate do parents have with appeals? And do we point that out to parents so they understand the risk involved?
I haven't got a figure to give you to hand, but the appeals, unless something's gone, the appeal happens in 2 parts. So the first part is whether the admissions process has been properly applied. That's not usually found to be at fault. So then the second part is whether overfilling a school it outweighs the disruption to the pupils at that school would outweigh the disruption to the individual child. Typically, they're not successful, and so there are some individual parents who've been through many appeals, and there are some parents who go through repeatedly in popular areas for appeals for the same schools again and again. There's a right of appeal once per academic year after one application, unless any exceptional circumstances change. So there are individuals who go through a whole series of appeals and just on the off chance of being successful. They are successful on some occasions, but that's less common than them being unsuccessful, if that helps you without giving you any figures.
So what happens to children who have an unsuccessful appeal? Do they just not go to school?
Well, they will be advised of the nearest Leicestershire school with spaces and encouraged to make an application for that school. Ultimately, if parents refuse to send them to school and there are spaces available, they may be referred to Children Missing Education.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola.
Yeah, you see, you are referring to criteria of admission. Which are the 3 highest and commonest criteria for admission?
Well, if it's named on an EHCP, it's a looked after child. And then I think it would be more debatable as to which there were, but it would be about catchment areas, possibly. There is the sibling things which has appeared, and this is where you've got different academies applying it differently. Some academies don't have catchment areas, and it's just based on distance. Others, it's down to catchment areas. But essentially, once you've gone away from those core criteria, so EHCPs and special needs being named and looked after children, it's much more variable about distance distance from one form or another, or some of those other ones that have been mentioned.
Thank you.
Just for completeness, to respond to a theme of messages that are coming through, there is a parallel activity that takes place when a child is deemed to be out of school, that the inclusion service, the report that I bring through to you on that. So those activities happen in parallel, and in particular for the cohort of children, when it was asked, I think by Mr. Allen over there, was if it's a particular cohort of children, those children known to a social worker or previously known to a social worker, there is a clear join up between those children who were known to a social worker to make sure that they are in school or on the journey to be in school if they're already out of school.
Mr. Hills.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. First off, thank you for the report. It's really interesting to see all the kind of facts and figures put down in black and white and how many cases we're actually dealing with. I sympathise with the admissions department for two reasons. It's obviously very complicated dealing with all the different admissions policies. And the other thing is we've seen a massive jump in the year 7 cohort. You know, okay, maybe not on the last 12 months, but kind of in the last couple of years we have. And my understanding is that your funding for the admissions department hasn't gone up in tandem with that. So it's obviously even more complicated and stretched as well. My question, though, is more about kind of reflective learning. You know, I think it's fair to say that it's been a struggle this year for the admissions department. And then that's knocked on with a struggle for parents as well, and a frustration for parents and children going to school. So what kind of learning has been taken over the last kind of 6 months or so, and how will that be adapted going ahead next summer?
Yeah, thank you. And I just on your point around funding, absolutely right. So the numbers of children that the admissions service is responsible for dealing with has gone up. But actually the admissions service has stayed the same size for a number of years. So as you can imagine, that means that those admissions officers are dealing with far more cases. And on top of that, not just the numbers of children have gone up, but the numbers of requests around mid-term transfers, we've seen a continued rise across the years in those as well. But you're right. We've had some significant challenges this academic year, which has given rise to huge amounts of learning. So for a number of areas, really. One is that we are working really hard to make sure that when we come to the National Offer Day on the 1st of March for our children that are moving from primary to secondary, that we get it right, that those children are offered a place, families know where they're going. So we're making a number of changes around how we allocate places to those children to make sure that if they don't get into one of their preferred schools, that we are automatically making sure that they get into a school. So there's a number of changes that we're doing to make the system much more simple for parents as well. We did a lot of comms work in the run-up to the closure on the 31st of October around those really important message around, catchment schools, all of the things that I repeated as well. So a lot of communication exercise. We've changed our website. We've changed the way that parents apply for school places as well. So there's a whole raft of things that have gone on. The other thing that we have done is that we've put some additional staff into our admissions service as well, but that's temporary. There's no more money. I've kind of moved some staff around, but we're also doing some deep looking at the way in which we process the applications as well. We have got a new computer system which is different, records our children differently in terms of their school placements. So lots and lots of different work around making sure that we don't get into this position again in the it would be kind of the next summer, next academic year.
Thank you. I'd just like to bring up a couple of points. On page 16, paragraph 13, about your process is school application get under 200 academy admission policy. Is there any work going to try and encourage more, I know what you're going to say, but more joined up thinking? It's all in the same county, and it would be, I'm sure, helpful for everybody if there was not quite 200, but maybe get it down a bit, and that would make it easier. And the other one I was looking at was the mid-term transfers. I think it's under the Armed Forces Covenant that the Armed Forces don't always have a choice of when they're going to move, how they're going to move. And so I presume this is all taken into account. I know you've mentioned people moving into the area and asylum seekers, but we are part of the Armed Forces Covenant, and those children should not be
Yeah, so just in response to your first question, it would be delightful if we had a single admissions criteria for Leicestershire. We do publish our strategy, and those schools for which we have responsibility as maintained schools obviously do follow that admission strategy. If they want to amend it, they need to go through a process to do it, and indeed we need to bring our changes to Cabinet. Unfortunately, the legislation allowed academies to be their own admitting authorities, and as such, they're able to write their own criteria. They do need to consult if they want to change their criteria, but they are absolutely not duty bound to follow our admissions criteria. They do use our criteria, and they will, look loosely around what we do, but at the end of the day, the kind of Academy Act, or the introduction of academies, was very much about allowing those schools to make choices. So unfortunately, the service is working against 200, just over 200 different admissions policies, and they need to work against those for every single child that applies. And then very quickly on the Armed Forces Covenant, yeah, absolutely, we are operating under that covenant. And as Alison set out, we have a number of children for whom we will make sure that they have school places because of their various characteristics. But obviously those children who are Armed Forces children are dealt with under the Covenant, as well as those children who are coming into Leicestershire seeking asylum as well. So we've got a number of arrivals from Ukraine and various other countries for which we are responsible for finding school places as well.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we've had a very good discussion on that. Mrs. Taylor, did you want to come back on anything else before we move on to the next item?
I think it's come clear by all the questions and the answers how complex this work is, and it is really complex with a very, very small team that work incredibly hard. So there are going to be some hiccups and bumps along the way, but we're working as hard as we can to make sure that every child has a place in school that they're happy with and parents are happy with. But it is a very complex area to work in.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alison. Thank you very much, Ted. We now move on to item 9. Which is on page 21 of your agenda pack. And this is Leicestershire's response to tackling child criminal exploitation. And this is with Sharon and Donna. Thank you. So you're going to start, Sharon. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have the pleasure of presenting the report that comes periodically to this committee on our response to how we work with and tackle child criminal exploitation. Before I hand over to Donna to pull out some of the key detail before taking questions from yourselves, I'd just like to draw your attention to the report that's attached to the committee report, which is on a project, Harm Outside the Home, which was a project that Leicestershire was one of the key leaders on across the East Midlands region in developing an approach, a better approach, a multi-agency approach to how we work with and support young people where criminal exploitation is a factor and a risk factor for.
No, I don't think I'm on. Oh, am I on? Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. So in relation to the data that's within this report, we haven't seen huge changes. in terms of the cohort of children that are involved in all forms of exploitation. What we see regularly is the difference of a model of exploitation. So it isn't just around sexual exploitation, it's around drug dealing, county lines activity that you're all aware of, money laundering, children being asked to hold weapons or huge amounts of cash, or vulnerable adults being targeted for the production or the packaging of drugs. So in relation to the report, the data is collated and analysed by Leicestershire County Council business support. Now, we collect information alongside Leicestershire Police, Health, Probation, and our colleagues in the Violence Reduction Network. So we are trying to overlay as much detail as possible to make sure that we have a very, very clear landscape picture across the districts of what exploitation looks like within those spaces. The aim of the project that Sharon's referred to in terms of harm outside the home is an opportunity to intervene earlier. So many of the cases that I've come to talk to you about in the past have been when incidents of harm have already occurred. We're looking for opportunities where antisocial behaviour is starting to rise, where neighbourhood policing are seeing groups of young people congregate. And this is all worked against really the backdrop of the pandemic and starting to get out into local communities and to talk to children. So it's very much about us working with districts and having eyes and ears out there to see what's happening for our children across LCC. We can't solve drug dealing, and I've said that before, or associated criminality, but we can improve our response. So part of the project was the development of a contextual framework to tackle exploitation. So there is a very clear offer, and my targeted area would be education in terms of raising awareness and asking them to start to consider, with our assistance from our specialist team, what exploitation looks like in their area and their local community. So that's in school and around school. We're very aware that in terms of numbers of violence for young people, a lot of that activity seems to take place between 3 and 4 p.m. So that would suggest it's when they are leaving school. In relation to child sexual exploitation, within the report, we've seen clearly a drop in numbers. Now, I'm part of the National Working Group, and nationally, we are following the same trend that there seems to be a drop around sexual exploitation. However, in Leicestershire, we've seen a rise of young women being represented to almost hold a dual status. So the introduction to the criminality is through sexual exploitation, possibly a boyfriend-girlfriend model, and then the young people are then introduced to criminality. And that's something nationally that we're assisting the National Working Group in looking at. And also very, very low numbers coming through, particularly in terms of charging and prosecution around group exploitation. So that would be in regard to children being in a property, possibly a party model, and somebody being exposed to something they haven't consented to, and how we prosecute. So that's something nationally and locally we're looking at. In relation to our missing children have started to rise. I would suggest to you that's seasonal. We've had the spate of good weather, and that seems to be when our children start to go missing. You'll see, and I invite you please to read the report on the Harm Outside the Home project. One part of that project was based on 4 young women that we support locally that had an intense support service, but very little engagement with any of the professionals around them. What we did, we went out and met them within their local community and asked them what they wanted. They were very clear that they didn't want professionals talking to them constantly about risk taking, because they clearly believed they weren't taking risks and they were in control. So we had a 6-month programme. Every Tuesday afternoon, those young women turned up every week, sat down with a consistent group of social workers, a team manager and youth workers, and the activities were based around food, cooking, sitting down and sharing food together, some craft activities, but we weaved into that very well thought out professional introductions. So we did some work with a psychologist about trauma-informed behaviours and what makes you react in a certain way in certain situations. And we were able to extend that to the parents of the children that were part of the project. And the backdrop, as you'll see when you look at indicators and vulnerabilities, lots of the children have been exposed to domestic abuse previously. So it was extremely beneficial, and particularly for this group of parents that developed a WhatsApp group. So not only were they responding to us saying you need to know where your child is and check out if they've gone to their friend's house on a Saturday evening, they were also talking about their own experience of working with the police, what it feels like to care for an exploited child and how isolating. So part of our work is around improving our response to parents, not blaming parents. And part of the national remit, I'm part of the consultation group for the tackling exploitation, and we are developing 10 principles. This is government led to tackle exploitation, and it's very much based around common sense, strong valued social work that we work to in Leicestershire in terms of science and safety. So partnership with parents, using education as protection and trusted relationships. So we are very, very lucky in Leicestershire that my teams have low caseloads, so they are flexible and available to children and young people. You'll see I've commented on the National Intensification Weeks. We now in Leicestershire, it's actually based in Charnwood, that we have a reception centre. So if the police go and enforce on particular addresses and children are found there, they come back with the police to our care, and we support them through that process. We've also, at the last intensification week, had staff in the custody suites to support police officers having a much more appropriate conversation about children and using that crisis point to see if a child wishes to disclose, and we can consider whether who is the adult that's exploiting them, that's placed them in this position. On Monday, I just wanted to mention that we are leading at police headquarters 2 sessions on missing from home children. So we're inviting representatives from local provision, from children's homes and across the partnership to talk about how you can use the tools that we've already provided to consider missing, how you make an appropriate referral to children's services and to Leicestershire Police, and around our looked after pack, which is developed specifically for residential care and placements, about what you need to know, what you should be doing, and if you are compliant with statutory guidance around responding to missing children.
Thank you very much. Did you want to come in, Sharon?
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to add for information of the committee, Aisha Delby, who's one of our team managers of the CSE team, so we have 2 managers, was actually put forward for a national award by a team, and having been shortlisted, which was a really good achievement, actually got a silver award on Friday. So Donna and Wendy Collins, as head of service, accompanied Aisha, so thought members would want to know that that recognition that was given to Aisha there.
Thank you. I take it. Please give her many congratulations from the committee, but I'm sure all the councillors and people would like to say thank you very much indeed. Maybe I'll look at the lead member. Maybe we could let more councillors, and as you know, the great work that she's done and quite rightly has been awarded, but obviously with working in the department and working with the backing, she's managed to achieve that. So, and on that point, Deborah, did you want to come in at this stage? No. So I'll now open it up. So I've got Mr. Smith first.
Thank you, Chair. And just want to start by congratulating you and the whole team. Fantastic work. You're ticking so many boxes and helping our local kids, which is just an immense thing to do. But reading through the report, I did notice that the vast majority of your, when you jump in, essentially, is post 11. So we're looking at secondary school. Now, I was reading reports the other day where particularly county lines and things like that are coming in younger and younger at the ages of 8 and 9, which is just absolutely terrifying. Can I ask what the department has got planned to tackle that news? Thank you.
Yes, we're working. We have representatives from head teachers from primary schools. So I do sit on the head teachers forum. Now, what we are looking at is developing tools. As you will remember from CSE, when we did the productions and we did theatre company productions, we developed something for senior schools and then an in the net that was for primary children. So it's much subtler around trusted relationships, really, and not keeping secrets. So that's something that we're looking at. And we've also looked at, you know, we have a variety of films that we use. So particularly for Brecht's Last Game, which features issues about the online threat, there are 3 different versions of that, whether it's and the appropriateness, whether it should be seen by primary age schools. I have a regional meeting next week to talk to other areas of how they've developed that offer to primary age children. You're quite right. The youngest child that we've worked with has been 10 in terms of county lines activity.
Mr. Welsh and then Mr. Hadji-Nicolau and Mr. Martin. I get your name right this time. I do apologise, Mr. Martin and Mr. Hunt.
Welcome, Donna. Thanks for coming. Are we still linked to Wigston Police Station? Is there still a link there? And do you want to just tell us a little bit about the nature of the relationship with the police there? Just because there are members who perhaps haven't made the sort of visits that some have.
Yes, and I'd welcome anybody that wishes to come on, that wants to come and visit Wigston Police Station. It's a partnership, so Leicestershire County Council have a multiple response within Wigston Police Station. We have 2 responses to child exploitation teams. We also have a response to domestic abuse, and I also house our out of hours response. So it's around that network opportunity and joint risk taking and risk holding across the partnership. So effectively, every morning there is a meeting. We look at the last 24 hours of reports that have come through to the police. If there is an element of exploitation or missing children, that comes to a formal meeting where the partnership grades the child. If the child is seen as high risk, and that's rightly we're starting to talk about early intervention, something's happened, they will be allocated a police detective and a social worker and potentially a youth worker. They will deliver support and service to that child from possibly initial disclosure right through to possibly a judicial process and then recovery and aspiration afterwards. We're very clear in Leicestershire that our children aren't perpetual victims. I think that's really important. And with reference to our relationship with Leicestershire Police, the award that Aisha has received was a partnership presentation. So it was from not only her teams and this local authority, but Leicestershire Police also contributed to it. So really demonstrates the work that's been we committed to over the last 6 years to make it work. Opportunity for lifetime information sharing and joint risk holding.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you very much. Mr. Leon Hadji-Nicolau.
Thank you. One of the major headlines nationally is about children as young as 12 being exploited into carrying drugs for gangs or drug dealers. Have you come across this one? Because I haven't seen this being especially highlighted in your presentation.
Yes, yes. So that's why we made a decision to develop a response to sexual exploitation and to criminal exploitation. So I have 2 duplicate teams within the hub. So the criminal exploitation team are made up of multiple professionals. So I now have a team manager that has come from a youth justice background. So we've had 4 cases that have been through the judicial process around children that have been exploited and have been coerced, groomed to carry drugs, children that have been found in trap houses, that have been encouraged to commit crimes of horrendous sexual abuse against other children. And that again is that mechanism of perpetrators videoing these dreadful scenes and then almost blackmailing children to commit those crimes. So it is a specific piece of work. We have had a review by Bedfordshire University, who supported us around the 4 Girls project about the missing children. And they really liked the element that we had 2 teams that responded separately to both criminal exploitation, which is your county lines and drug dealing, and to the sexual nature. But what I have to say is my team will respond. It will be the best person that fits with that child. So it's the right service at the right time, and whoever can walk that child's journey with them, because the connection between my staff and the children is what makes it work and gets us really through to prosecution. The prosecutions that we've had have been excellent, but that's around our team and a huge complement of workers from youth justice and across my service. If we have a case that's in court and it's a week's trial, you're potentially looking at 7 or 8 workers that will be supporting that process, whether it's victims, witnesses or parents that are attending court. So a huge commitment, but it is 2 separate services.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the work that you guys do. I've spent years working in HMP Leicester, seeing the opposite side of it and working in some of the sex offender jails around the Midlands. So I really do see that when your team gets it right, I mean, it really is best for everybody, isn't it? So thank you very much. I'd just like to ask a couple of questions on points 31 to 34. In Q1, there was 40 referrals made, and I think it's 30 out of 40 we knew these children already. So, you know, what is the review process like about trying to understand the common themes in these to see if we can intervene earlier, you know, just so, you know, we can make the best chance that, you know, these things not happening again. And then number 32, I think the committee's heard me speak on disabled children, you know, quite a lot, and to, you know, hear that 242 disabled children over the last 4 years have been, you know, child sexual exploitation. You know, these numbers are far higher than the proportion of the popularity of these children. So it just shows that, you know, disabled children are, you know, very, very vulnerable to child sexual exploitation. And it'd be, you know, it'd be interesting to get your view on, 1, why this is, and 2, what we need to do as, you know, as a service to ensure that these disabled children aren't being sexually exploited. What things do you need, you know, to really tackle that? And, you know, what support, you know, would you want? And then again, just to reinforce that it's, you know, 35% and point 34, there's 14 out of 40 either on the SEND register or have an EHCP. 35% of children, if they're in education, of the sexual exploitation referrals we've had, you know, are known to be special educational needs or have disabilities, which, you know, I think the whole committee will, you know, agree that's, you know, really difficult reading and sort of quite an emotive subject. So thank you very much for what you do, but it'd be great to get your reflection on these points.
Thank you. If I move back to project 2 that we supported through the Harm Outside the Home project, This was around early intervention. So part of my portfolio is within the screening team, so our front door to services. So I had a senior social worker that was looking for children that may be on the periphery of our threshold, so potentially may not receive a service. So the criteria was a child that was potentially facing exclusion from school, a child that was on the edge of care, potentially because of their behaviour, vulnerable 16 and 17-year-olds that were facing homelessness, and first-time entrants to having any contact with Leicestershire Police. What we discovered that with a very strong, robust package at the front end, we could make a real difference. So what I would like to say is we've prevented those children becoming involved with exploitation. One young man had been sofa surfing for 2 years, had landed in local neighbourhood 3 doors down from where his parents lived. We talked to him about his resilience was himself. And we talked about what was the most important thing, and it was getting his exams at school. So we supported the lady in the local community that given him a home, but we supported education. So we made sure he went into school, and when he was worried or he couldn't contain his emotions, there was a member of our team to support that. So we assisted keeping that inclusion, because the biggest issue for us is inclusion rather than exclusion. And I think that's really, really important. In terms of the profiling of children, you're quite right to raise it. We work hard with education and our inclusion services to identify children who are on the periphery of exclusion. The majority of children you'll see are in mainstream school. Some are in alternative provision. It isn't necessarily where young people, like young offenders, learn from each other. Children are targeted outside school gates, online. In relation to children with learning disability or bereavement or their emotional well-being, there is an issue because of their family dynamics or dysfunction, they will be targeted by perpetrators. Majority of our referrals start with that online connection, that a perpetrator has cast the net and somebody responds, because that's how they feel on the day. You know, and we talk to children and we talk to educators about these children aren't special. They're special to us and their families, but not to perpetrators, whoever takes the hook. So that is why we are and really in terms of the HCP plans, I want to see that it's acknowledged if I know those children within the hub. So if a child is known to me because of a missing episode or an online threat and we've given advice, it needs to be part of their plan, that somebody is considering that team around the child, particularly education. So thank you for raising it, and you're quite right.
Mr. Hunt.
Yeah, this is a really excellent report, and it's a sort of report that gives us members confidence that you know, we're working as hard as we can in the best way that we can with the resources we've got. So congratulations for that. Just a reflection really of what's written in the report, that is it Donna, is it? As Donna was saying, that this is a large part of this is coping with very vulnerable young people, and in regards of criminal exploitation, there are some very violent and evil people in the network that we're talking about. And I know from talking to residents about this, which often crops up in the community, that prosecution and conviction of perpetrators is right at the top of their list. And it's not obviously prosecuting the young people, but the people behind that. Do you think the police have put a high enough priority on that? I mean, they're dealing with all sorts of criminality, from cybercrime to rural, all sorts of things. But you know, talking to the police, sometimes you get the impression, well, you know, we've been told that you know, drugs, as they would put it, drugs are not the sort of thing that we can prioritise because perhaps it's so rife. I just wonder what your view was on that particular point. Not one that I necessarily agree with, but it's one that's out there. Thank you.
I think there's a huge commitment across Leicestershire County Council and Leicestershire Police, and there certainly has for the last 7 years when I've been championing this work. So within the hub, our original primary role was about prosecution, because that's what we felt we'd been measured against. Our primary role now is around safeguarding children. So if we can intervene, and we also, through our work, we meet fortnightly. So all our children that we are supporting are reviewed fortnightly. And we also review a list of perpetrators. And I fought very, very hard, because there are people of interest. They are not necessarily criminals, but they are names that crop up in certain areas consistently and are involved with young people. So what the police will attempt to do, we work across neighbourhood policing. At the moment, Charnwood, we work very, very well with in terms of the district council and the neighbourhood police, and Melton and Hinckley. So we would make across our services life very difficult for people who are committing this level of crime. The comment that I've made about this recent prosecution and the perpetrator receiving 20 years, I sincerely believe without the support of the hub and our staff that supported both mother and child through that prosecution, we wouldn't have got that result. And we continue to offer intensive therapeutic support, particularly to mother who sat through court and listened to what her child had been through. And this young person was autistic and had ADHD. So I think that there is a commitment. I think there are resources that are used in terms of an analysis. That's the key for us, because we need to be data-led so we can target hotspots quicker. So we analyse, the police have lost their analysts currently. So it's about us pulling all that information together and targeting areas before something happens and we have children that are going into court to give evidence.
Thank you very much, Donna. Mr. Hills.
Right now. Roger, can you just turn? Oh, there we go. I was just about to shout then. The report, the team can now be award-winning, the team. My question's on point 29 in the report when it comes to child sexual exploitation. Only 2 out of 40 referrals in Q1 came from BME backgrounds. Now, I did a bit that has only gone up in the last probably been 11 years. Do you think there's a bit of underreporting from BME backgrounds, and if so,
Yes. Yes. Oh. Yes, definitely. And what I can say over the past 6 years, we had a huge amount of support from the OPCC and lots of work streams. And we did have BAME champions that went out into local communities. So we have anything that we produce in terms of comms work and films, we try and make sure that that particular resource supports particular communities. But you're right, we are now looking at marginalised cohorts of children that we can reach out to. And particular communities are very concerned about our work. We work with travelling communities as well. That's been very, very difficult. So we've instead of going and presenting, we are concerned about your children being involved in this activity, we've gone out and said there is an issue online. Would you like to understand and learn about that? Which has given us an in, and I will use any professional that can get a foot in the door anywhere. So if there's a health professional or a voluntary agency that are involved, then we will utilise that. But you're quite correct, and I would say across LLR we are very underrepresented.
Jane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a final comment really about the paper and just picking up on a number of the questions. I think we're really proud of the work that this team does in terms of its relentless focus on children, and the fact that we're able to work with, well, not only work with, but identify children, and we're enabling them to speak up and then give evidence, which is leading to some of the prosecutions that Donna's set out. And I think we can't underestimate the courage and bravery that it takes our children to be able to do that, but also that kind of relentless focus and support that our staff are giving them to do that. And you know, they deserve to win national awards, but they deserve some really high praise as well. I think also, and slightly linked to your question, Mr. Hunt, around we are very fortunate. Leicestershire Police take a very, very child-focused approach, but they also take a relentless focus around perpetrators as well. So and some of that focus and some of that work is as a direct result of the multi-agency work that Donna's led through the work of her team. So in Leicestershire, across the partnership, we take a child-focused approach. We think of them as children first, even if they are, you know, involved in some quite high criminality. They're children. We look at them in terms of their victim, but we take that kind of relentless focus on making sure that we identify those perpetrators, but also work to make sure that they are taken to court and then dealt with as well. So it is, I mean, you know, we're presenting to you a really wonderful report, but it really doesn't do justice, I think, to some of the depth of work that goes on within that service.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Taylor, did you want to come back?
I don't think I can add any more than what Jane has, but I'm immensely proud of the work here, and I think Ofsted did it as well. They were highly commended for the work that they do there. So no, I can't give them enough praise, and it is a true partnership working. And if you need an example of how to work in partnership, the Vulnerability Hub is definitely that.
I think also from looking at it as well, all of us would agree it's a very hard work, and at times it must be almost quite depressing, and you have to be so dedicated, but also to stay calm and impartial almost, so that, but I bet when you go home at times or back to the office, and that's when you need the support of everybody else, because it is tough, very tough. And but all thanks to the whole team and all of you in the department, Jane, because you all support each other. And I think that's most important. Thank you. But I see no other comments. So Donna, thank you so much. And we now move on to item 10, which is the Q2 performance report, which starts on page 97 of your agenda pack. And I think, Sharon, you're taking us through this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll do the introduction to the report and take you through the items to point 24, and then I'll hand over to Alison, who will deal with the early years and education part. So this is a regular report that committee see that updates you on certain criteria and performance indicators that we as an authority are measured against. I'll draw your attention to paragraph 6 that says of the 50 measures that have a national benchmark, because some don't have a national benchmark, but of the 15 that do, 3 of those figures we're in the top quartile, 5 are in the second quartile, 5 in the third, and 2 are in the fourth. So that's how we are performing. Paragraph 7 right down to, well, initially to paragraph 17, outlines the key performance indicators that children's social care are measured against. I hope that committee will note the improving performance against a number of those, or a continued high performance against a number of those indicators, particularly around our response to child protection and our support for care leavers. Draw your attention to the paragraph 8, which is around the review of child protection cases in timescale, to note that although that continues to be a focus of work for the department, we were within the quarter showing an improvement. Child protection, children subject to child protection plans for a second or subsequent time has decreased slightly, but is still a focus of our work, and as we will come to committee in future months to show some of the work that's coming from our work in the region, but also nationally around how other authorities are performing against this criteria. The other key area to note for the children's social care are the number of single assessments completed within 45 days. That had seen a slight decrease. I'm happy to say that we are now showing an improved figure, but that decrease was around some particular pressures on the service at a particular moment in time. Our referrals and contacts, our referrals come into one front door. We have a triage across front door and children and family wellbeing services to make sure that our children and families are signposted and engaged in the right service right from the start. You'll note that during this particular quarter, there'd been a slight decrease in the number of children and families referred into children and family wellbeing services, but it comes after 2 years of a significantly stable increased number of requests for services within that part of the service area. Some of our youth and justice statistics are more based on the figure over an annual figure, but we do note that in this particular period, we had seen a number of first-time entrants to the criminal justice system had increased, and although that is a relatively small number of children and young people, obviously it's a figure that we focus on and would want to see that as low as it possibly can be, and the reoffending rates are there for your consideration as well. So if I hand over to Alison to cover early years and education, and then we'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sharon. So I'll take you through from 25 through to 35. The early years data for the fee uptake has not changed because it's non-available since the last publication of this report. Moving into the, to get onto my right page on my notes, sorry. Moving into schools that are good or outstanding from Q1 to Q2, primary schools is 91.6% and secondary 75.6%, and that's remained unchanged since Q1. And that is fitting us into the third quartile of local authorities. Elective home education at the end of Q2, there are 855, which is just a slight reduction, and that's mainly attributed to those year 11s who are ending their elective home education. Whilst there's a slight reduction on that quarter period, the elective home education rate is just increasing slightly in trend as we're going through each academic year. And the overall increase in elective home education is in line with the national trend. And I've spoken before at previous reports around elective home education. The trend is usually sort of falling into one of two areas for the reasons of the uptake of that experience through having enforced home learning has made that sort of decision for a family to take up elective home education or for health related reasons or safety. But we do continue to monitor all those children who are electively home education as well. The Key Stage 2 data as released currently only gives a comparison for all pupils, and gender levels are available. So the percentage of pupils achieving expected standard or above in reading, writing and mathematics at the end for 22 is 62%, which is 5.7% lower than in 2019 when we last made the comparison. But the performance is within the first quartile nationally. Key Stage 4 performance, which was released on the 20th of October for Progress 8, all pupils, free school meal eligibility, SEN support and SEN for an educational healthcare plan, is within the second quartile nationally, which represents an improvement in the relative performance since this performance was reported in 2019. That's the end of my section of the report, so we can take questions now. Thank you.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you very much. Point 11 about the single assessments going down, you said there were some specific reasons why they dropped the 5%. I didn't know what they were and what sort of things. And then do you want to stop and then ask a second question afterwards, or shall I do them all in one? Yeah, the second one was about early years. So in number 1819, it says that we're helping 1,000 less children and 300 less families. Now, I don't believe that would be to do with a decrease in sort of need out there. And I think we've heard from the report that we've just had from Donna how early intervention is
Yeah, thank you. In relation to the assessments, these are assessments that are predominantly, not entirely, but predominantly completed in our first response. So they're completed when children are first received or referred into children's social care. I say predominantly because there are particular circumstances where it is appropriate for later on in our involvement to complete an assessment. The reduction within the particular quarter that's before you were that we did experience at a time of increased demand over that period. We did have some staffing issues around sickness and availability of agency to cover some of those areas. So because of that, the percentage within 45 days was slightly lower. What I can reassure you of is that all those children had an assessment, but some may have taken slightly longer to complete. In relation to children and family wellbeing, yeah, they are interesting figures in that during that quarter, when compared with the other quarter, there is a significant reduction in the number of children being supported. That is not the case for ongoing quarters. It was a particular issue of the numbers that were coming through at that moment in time that actually tallied with the demand upon children's social care at that time, but also looking at the needs of the children that were being referred through to us. So it's not, although at that moment in time there were fewer children in that service, it wasn't that we were receiving referrals or contacts and we were declining their involvement. So that is not an ongoing trend within the service.
Obviously 1,000 children less is a huge number. There must have been some actual reasons why that was less. You talked about staffing for the other issues, or what were the actual drivers for a whole 1,000 children less? So
Yeah. It's, as Jane was just saying, it was about that a particularly high number. So we'd had a period just before of a particularly high number of children and families referred to us. Children and families aren't just referred and closed within a month. So actually, we did see an increased number during the pandemic and after the pandemic. So some of the reduction here was about children and families maybe being supported in different ways, or by signposted to different services. But what I can assure you of is that though that number is significant, this wasn't about children being referred in to us and us assessing that they didn't require a service.
Judges come in. Yeah, I think just to add to that, it's probably better if we'd compared the quarters to a quarter. So the Q2 is across the summer. The majority of our referrals for our children and family wellbeing service come in through schools. Schools don't run most of Q2. So probably what would have been more helpful if we'd compared Q2 this year to Q2 last year, because you can then get a better indication. I think comparing quarters isn't overly helpful just because of the kind of way in which referrals come in. We're not concerned about that drop, although it reads as a significant concern. We're not concerned. We've got some really good, strong, robust ways of identifying children that are at risk. Schools know how to make referrals, and we pick them up. So we're not concerned at that drop. Actually, what would be more helpful is for us to look at comparing that to Q2 last year, where we can kind of understand some of the patterns. It's not unusual that there's differences and variations between quarters. It's the right question to ask, though, because 1,000 children is a lot of children. But actually, as Sharon said, there are many, many children within the current service that we're working with as well. So we can go back and just have a look at the kind of quarter-on-quarter comparison, because comparing Q1 and Q2 is often a little bit more challenging.
Got a question on the adoption report. Page 137. So it's about the Adoption Support Fund. There's been quite a drastic reduction in the amount that's been given out to Leicestershire families, £632,000 reduction year on year. And obviously this is a national pot that adopters really rely on. And I've had quite a few parents at the school that I represent talk about the difficulties in the Adoption Support Fund and the process of getting it. I understand in the report it says that it could be because of going back to school and therefore less demand. The adopters from the school they say that they're actually it's more to do with finding it very difficult to access this fund through having to go through the front door of social care, having to reapply year on year, having things being knocked back, and sort of trying to communicate with staff. There's only a few staff that are doing it, and obviously this is a national pot of money, which is very, very valuable. What are the reasons why there's been a £600,000 dip in adopters, and secondly, what can we do to help them next year for that to go right back up to where it was in the previous year, because the adopters that talk to me say that demand has not increased at all.
Well, Michelle Robinson, who's the service manager for adoption, is on the line, so I'm sure Michelle will be able to give some of those details, and if we can't answer all the questions, we can go away and come back later. But Michelle, are you able to answer the question?
I think I can answer most of it. Just bear with me while I put my camera on. Excuse me. Hi everybody. The reason why there's such a significant drop is the total amount that was claimed last year was actually the government and the ASF fund increased the amount available to adopters through COVID. So there's extra funds available that we used to support adopters in different ways. So that accounts for some of that dip, and we had to put a lot of extra support in during children, and some of our children being very vulnerable, not accessing school, and parents choosing for the children not to access school during those COVID times, during lockdowns and things like that. So extra support was applied for then. So the commentary around the children going back to school has meant that our adopted children become more stabilised because they're back in their normal structure and their normal routine. So that accounts for that, the less amount applied for. There is difficulties in applying for that money, and that's through the ASF funds criteria really, and what they expect, and they send us back. Whenever we make an application, it's very rarely that we don't have to come back and do some rework on it. And there's a process, and the waiting time for those decisions has increased from the ASF themselves. So the challenge is getting it through the system in the first place. In response to adopters being able to apply for that fund, what we did was we recognised that actually adopters don't want to come through the first response route anymore, and so our offer now of post-adoption support is lifelong, and we have a dedicated duty system that is open, and an email address where adopters can approach us at any time. The duty line is just open once a week, where they can ring in and they can ask for that assessment of need. We did have a period in the spring and early summer where we had a reduction in the number of staff, so there was a short waiting list then, but now all cases have been allocated, so we're not anticipating that, but the delay at the other end is from the Adoption Support Fund. Does that answer your question? Sorry, I can't hear you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, if it's okay, Chair, I did just want to make comment about two of the reports. I know we're not going into detail, but I just want to make comment. And I know they are the 3 statutory reports that we provide to you, and they are really big documents, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to say things about 2 of the services. So the Leicestershire Fostering Agency statutory report that you've got in front of you does not only set out all of the work, but I think I wanted to particularly make reference to the remarkable work that's continued to go on, not just over the pandemic, but following the pandemic, to continue to recruit foster carers to support our children. This has been really difficult over the pandemic, and I think the team has shown amazing resilience and tenacity at continuing to find carers for our children, but also to do some really amazing work around supporting our children within their placements as well. So I just didn't want to lose the opportunity to say that. And then I think, again, just to make reference around the adoption report, and again, it is a statutory report and one that we present to you year on year, but again, wanted to take the opportunity to really highlight that really focused, innovative amazing work that service do to find forever homes for our children. And again, you can see the detail in the report around the number that it supports, but it is really testament to the amazing work that goes on within those services. It means that our children who can't live with their birth parents have somewhere safe and settled to live.
Yeah, just to concur with Jane on those two reports, and to note the third report that's before you, which is around the work of our independent reviewing officers. So 3 parts of the service that we can see, and hopefully you can see from the annual reports, are working incredibly hard for the children and families that they support.
No, I can't add any more, but you can see the variety of work that goes on across the department. So we're really dedicated, and it is all focused on the children. I think reading through all of these 3 reports, you can see that focus is on the child, the family, and hearing the voice of children. So yeah, no, I'm really pleased that you've liked them all. Thank you.